Brian and Kenzie in the morning. And Chicago's alternative all day.
Q101.
Kenzie's Krimes.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a North Side apartment.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
This is evil, what those people have done to me.
She says Heaven's Gate away team.
I'm not guilty.
Q101.
Brian and Kenzie on Q101. Time for another edition of Kenzie's Krimes, a deep dive into a local, whether it's Illinois or Wisconsin, Indiana, anywhere you can hear our voice, a crime, drama, murder, mystery. And Kenzie, what do we have today?
So I decided to dive into the story of Tom Odell. This story has some eerie similarities to the Menendez brothers. Tom Odell was the oldest of 4 children, all living in a nice home in Mount Vernon, Illinois. On November 8th, 1985, 18-year-old Tom Odell murdered the 5 members of his family in Mount Vernon, Illinois.
Oh, no build-up. It just you're just laying it out there.
I'm just going to get into it. And you want to know why?
I wasn't ready for that.
Buckle up, baby.
Listen, this is what my old radio boss used to say, show me the baby. And this is it. And he wanted me to get there. I'm like, God bless the baby. I'm like, I got there. Here you go. He killed his 39-year-old father first by stabbing him repeatedly with a butcher knife. Then he waited anxiously for his mother to return home. And when she did, he repeatedly stabbed her in the neck until she was dead, ending her life at the age of 39 as well. According to Illinois Supreme Court records, Tom left the house for a bit and then returned to meet his 10-year-old brother, Scott. He strangled him to death and left him in the master bedroom with his mom and dad. Oof. After this, Tom went and picked up his 2 other siblings, Sean and Robin, at school. He then brought them home and stabbed 13-year-old Sean. After making sure Sean was dead, he went and got his 14-year-old sister, Robin. He covered her eyes and told her he had a surprise. He led her to the bedroom where the bodies lay, then removed his hands and yelled surprise, and then proceeded to stab her.
This is horrific. This is disturbing.
I know. Chills up your body. So after killing them, he actually went out and partied and was arrested at a nearby motel. He was found guilty, and Tom Odell was sentenced to death. At the time, he was one of only 8 people in the U.S. since 1870 to be sent to death row for a family mass murder. After 17 years on death row, he expected a lethal injection to end his life. However, Illinois Governor George Ryan's move to end the death penalty in 2000 changed the course of the death sentence for Tom Odell, and it was changed for him to live out a natural life in prison.
I remember, obviously, when that happened on the news. I don't remember him being a part of that, but the death penalty removal in Illinois was obviously a huge story in that year.
Once this happened, it was an epiphany for Tom Odell, a man who this entire time thought he was on death row and his life was about to end, decided to reevaluate it all and called Dr. Robert Hanlon, a neuropsychologist, who then started to examine Tom Odell. I'm going to pause right there because the story that comes out about this is the moral compass of what's going on in life, right? Of what this doctor finds out through therapy with him.
I don't like where this is going.
I know.
I don't like it, but we'll find out the conclusion in 3 minutes. Brian and Kenzie on Q101.
The Brian and Kenzie Show.
On Q101.
Brian and Kenzie on Q101 with the conclusion to Kenzie's Krimes, a horrific, disturbing case here, but also now I'm not sure I like where this is going.
Tom Odell, who lived in Mount Vernon, Illinois, with his family, and in 1985, he murdered all 5 members, his parents, as well as his 3 siblings. He was sentenced to death, but that was removed. The death penalty was taken away in the 2000s, and now he was sentenced to a natural life ending in prison. Now, this sent him into having an epiphany, and he reached out to Dr. Robert Hanlon. He received a letter in the mail. He's a neuropsychologist because he kind of wanted to understand what happened to him. So they started a collaboration and wrote a book called Survived by One. Dr. Robert Hanlon said Tom Odell felt extreme regret and guilt. And this is a direct quote. Beyond that, he feels shame not only for what he did with his life and the murders of his family, but how it affected his community and other relatives, friends of the family, and teachers. He said everyone knew his family and the monumental crime. So he felt tons of guilt. guilt for the burden he put on everybody. He went on to say the motivation was pure revenge, directed primarily toward the mother for the abuse that she enacted and against his father for allowing the mother to abuse him for many years. He said there was also personality factors that Tom Otto possessed at the time because of drug use and his impulsive, aggressive tendencies. So his mother was physically and emotionally abusive, mostly targeted towards Tom and one of the younger brothers, Sean. And his father passively allowed the abuse to take place. Sean was actually at one point briefly removed from their home because he told school officials he'd been often denied food as punishment. And when his mother would go out, they would chain the boys to the bed.
Oof.
He was later returned to the home after both of his parents, begrudgingly and annoyed, had to take a parenting course required by the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. Tom was diagnosed as rebellious, oppositional, defiant, and manipulative. And because of really all the abuse and his parents' hatred that he was going through, he kind of turned, into a rebellious kid. He started neighborhood excessive drug use, most commonly cocaine and marijuana, and experienced, of course, quite a lot of depression. So November 1985, his parents no longer wanted anything to do with Tom, and they demanded that he moved out. All of those murders occurred on the deadline of him moving out.
So was it ever determined that he was trying to get out, like scamming his way to try to get out once the death penalty was off the table?
Well, no, I mean, he completely owned it. Like, he said that he lived with just like hatred and denial, and he really felt like he was going to live his whole life. He was going to die. He was living his life on death row and just carrying that around with him. And once it was lifted and he realized he's going to live his life, even though it's in prison, he's still going to live his life. He's not waiting, for that lethal injection. He wanted to understand himself better. He personally knew the abuse that he had gone through. He wanted to understand what he did. And even though he felt tons of extreme regret and guilt, mainly, and it says this throughout the book, for his siblings, because they were not part of the abuse. But extreme drug issues, extreme abuse, the deadline of knowing you have to, move out, just all compounding. It really was kind of like an episode of Snapped. Going through that therapy and just understanding himself and the situation, that's how he wanted to live the rest of his life, even though it's going to be in prison. And that book is published, again, Survived by One. Dr. Robert Hanlon is the author of it, but Tom Odell has a lot of the writing credit because it's his psychosis and these interviews that led to that snapping and talking about people who have gone through that and what you need to do to recognizing it as well.
The Brian and Kenzie Show.
On Q101.
The Brian and Kenzie Show.
On Q101.
It's Brian and Kenzie on Q101. Before we get to takeaways, I said there'll be something about My Chemical Romance after that song. They kind of had some mysterious letters on their social media, which is leading, I think, Case, you saw more on that, about it could lead to an announcement of a stadium tour.
I'm not saying anything.
You just did.
All I'm saying is...
You just said it. So
That, bingo.
Brian, what's my famous catchphrase?
Liv Moss.
Unfortunately, you are correct. What's my other famous catchphrase?
You hate big bands?
No, of course.
Oh.
It is ask questions. And there are a lot of people asking a lot of questions online right now about what My Chemical Romance's 2025 summer plans are. And if I were a betting man, I would say if you're a big My Kim fan, you'll be quite excited this summer. That's all I'm saying.
So tickets go on sale tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the My Kim tour.
I did not say that.
I can say honestly, at Riot Fest a couple years back when they reunited after 10 years and played here at Douglas Park, I've never seen anything like it. First off, they got better as a band, if that was even possible.
Good band.
And then they had to stop every song to calm everyone down after every song. And Gerard Way did an amazing job of keeping the crowd in a safe environment that was out of control. Not Riot Fest's fault, not My Chem's fault, just people were ready.
That was sheer humanity.
I loved it. It was great.
It's crazy.
Takeaways from today's show, 312-591-8300. Case, what do you got?
708 checked in their takeaway. Climbing the Empire State Building isn't cool.
They kidnapped that monkey. How dare you? They chimp snapped him.
Oh, well done.
Thank you.
Kenzie, what do you got?
219 takeaway. Case is he, Kenzie she, Brian is me.
Get it right.
And that is very important for you to keep in mind. When we say me, we're always talking about Brian.
I'm going to put that on my Instagram today. So I'll put that as my little thing. Me. I'm me.
I'm me. Kenzie is she. Case is he. And we want to have a good time all the time.
Damn right. Thank you. Finally, last takeaway from Fred in 708. Takeaway. Shane Waldron, son of a bitch.
Jonas, son of a bitch.
All right. Case, what's on the podcast?
Oh, my goodness. It's a loaded day. We, of course, have a big update on the monkey situation in South Carolina. Yes, they are still on the loose. Yes, you should be afraid.
There also might be some in Chicago. If you listen to the podcast, you'll find out where they are.
13 missing monkeys.
It's not good. Also, crew member Lorinda let down an entire nation. If you listen to the podcast, you will understand why. Hopefully, Lorinda will be back tomorrow to redeem herself. And, of course, it is Tuesday, which means there is a new Kenzie's Crime on the Brian and Kenzie podcast.
So go check it out anywhere you get your podcast. And, of course, the newly redesigned Q101 app. It's slick. It's free. Get it.
Brian and Kenzie in the morning. And Chicago's alternative all day.
Q101.